Good morning. Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Vicki Green. Today, I feel I need to begin with a disclaimer. I might laugh and have to leave the room because of my guest. And the views expressed on today's show do not reflect the views or opinions of this station or its advertisers. Okay, that's out of the way. So I'm thrilled to have a very funny lady in studio with me today to talk about the funny and the not so funny. She is Janice Harvey. Good morning, Janice.
Well, good morning, Vicki.
You are a longtime award-winning senior columnist at Worcester Magazine, and you're opinion columnist and a longtime teacher in the Worcester Public Schools. So you also have described yourself. You had a book come out about 6 years ago where you took your first 350. You've been writing for 20 years, 25 years?
At the time, I think it was 15. I've been 25. Now, it's 25,
okay.
Yeah.
So you took like your favorite 360 articles.
I don't even know how many it was.
That were in the basement, yeah. And but you wrote little pieces in between that,
right?
Reflecting on them. So you called yourself, quote, "I'm a softie at the core, despite my crusty exterior." So thank you for coming in today, softy but crusty Janice.
There you go. Someone once told me I was one of those marshmallow peeps.
Oh yeah, crusty on that. You can also put those in the microwave, and you know what happens. I think people
put a lot of things in the microwave.
Well, I think people might want to stick you in the microwave over the years.
It's happened. Yeah.
But you're the mother of two, grandmother to four, raised by a Worcester police officer, and lived all over the city of Worcester. But because so many of our listeners are from outside of the city and may have never read your columns online or in print, we want to talk about some of your favorite columns, your favorite targets. Number one is President Trump, because you are I'm
a flaming liberal, which I'm a Democrat.
And you say that in your article.
And I say it clearly, and yeah. I think it's pretty obvious.
But if people haven't read it, you do an opinion column. You're paid for your opinion.
Well, and it's important to remember that. And it is a luxury, and I don't take it for granted for a moment. I totally appreciate the fact that I have a podium from which to spew, and I'm able to say what I want. I've been very lucky that way, writing for an independent paper all these years. It definitely is a privilege to be able to do that and say what I want, and very rarely am I really reined in by editors. I've been lucky that way.
Yeah, I bet you have, because you've had many, many critics, everybody, from the people that you've written about to the man on the street to the woman at the Catholic high school. I mean, people come after you out of nowhere, the letters that you've written and the articles you've written. But to me, that seems like you're doing your job then, if you're getting people to feel something.
Well, that's exactly right. And I've actually, to be fair, I have had probably more favorable reviews from people. I mean, I've had a lot of people, and that means a lot to me, as if I write something and they let me know that, this really touched my heart for one reason or another. Because I think that my writing is sort of like that crusty thing we were talking about. I can be just as snide and fresh mouth, as my mother used to say, as I can be a big old softy. And some of my best columns, I think, have been the ones that are much more sensitive than they are salty.
And that's a good point, because the topics, listen, I went through your book of the first 300 articles, and I read you every other week, right? It's every other week?
Yep.
I keep flipping through because I thought it was every week back in the day, but you just make me laugh, whether I agree or not. One of your quotes was, you were talking about how you're a carnivorous person, and it was, quote, "Tofu should be used to grout showers."
Yes, it should. And I said, I believed that what I said was, if we weren't supposed to eat meat, it wouldn't taste so good.
But I mean, I don't know where you come up with
I have no
things.
idea. Oh, but that's one question you shouldn't ask me. I have no idea. Stuff flies out of me. It flies out of my mouth. It flies out of my fingertips. And I will say, if you want to get into talking about what might inspire me to write, it can be anything. And sometimes I don't know until my fingers hit the keyboard. And that's why I love to write. And that's why I find that I do consider it really, I'm a very lucky person that I do have that outlet, because I am an opinionated person. I'm kind of a loudmouth that way, with my opinions.
Well, you're not on the radio, and I'm on the radio. And so I don't want to be known as a loudmouth, but this is an outlet for me, because people ask me, too, how do you come up with the ideas for this show? Because, frankly, I do anything that I think is of interest to our listeners, not just in Worcester. Mm-hmm. Even though people I have may be from Worcester, Framingham, Metro West, wherever they are, we always talk about the bigger picture, because whatever happens in any city or any small town can be a microcosm of what's happening in other states and other areas. So you wanted to say something?
I would say with Worcester Magazine, the The things that I've written that have been the most well-received have been the ones that are more Worcester, that are Worcester neighborhood, that are about the people from Worcester, more than the political things that I write, which I love to do. But I find that the most well-received things that I write have to do with neighborhoods, have to do with, recently I did a cover story, which I don't do that often. Maybe once a year I'll do a cover
And that's
story.
news.
Yes, and that's news, and that's not an opinion, and that is, and that when I switch hats on that one,
Must be
I
hard.
have to be careful because I'm used to just spewing, and I have to really be careful. And recently, the cover story that I did was with the 5 survivors of the Indian Hill fire, which they just had their 50th anniversary
Yeah, I
of
read that.
And that, to me, first off, that was a privilege because what I did was I sat down with these gentlemen who were gracious and wonderful to do this, and I put down the tape recorder at Smitty's. We were in there with a round of beers. I put down the tape recorder, and I just let it go, and I let them talk. And I said very little. And to me, and I've heard so much from people on that, and I was so careful in writing that story because I wanted to make sure I really paid the respect that their sharing with me deserved, and that I wanted to get that story just right. You know, you can play with words with an opinion column. You don't play with a news story, though.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted you to come in, because we've spent a lot of time before the show started because I love your writing. I don't always agree with it, but that's why I like to read it. And I believe that the reason, I will come clean that I obviously am a journalist. I was a trained broadcast journalist back before the internet came along, and we didn't have as many sources, and you didn't hear about fake news. Really, I don't think that term was used until this current presidency, but there was always a skepticism of where you get your sources from. And when you're a trained journalist in print, especially in college, I was trained to the 5 W's, and you've got to do that in your article: who, what, when, where, and why, and get to the point, and make sure when you quote somebody, it's accurate. And then it goes to the editor, and then they have to copy, because grammar is not my thing. I mean, I'm not bad, but that's what I look for my editor for. But I have to make sure that it's factually correct. And in a column, you don't have to do that.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I will say yes, you do, because I can't. Then I do turn into fake news if I don't make sure that what I'm writing.
But a column's your opinion. It's not.
No, but I mean, I get sarcastic. I can throw out. Some stuff.
Really?
Right. I throw things out, and I get, and I can exaggerate and things. But I have to make sure that there's a distinct line between parody, and what people might say. She said this. I have to make sure that. Even though it sounds like when you read my stuff that I just threw it off the top of my head like a crazy person, I don't. I do read it back, and I do make sure, because I don't want somebody to come back and say to me, that is not the way that it was. That, no matter what I write. And that is something that we learn as writers. It's once it's in print, it's in stone. It's in stone.
Yeah, I like radio better for that reason.
Yeah, right. You can edit that out.
I can say it again.
I always liked radio because you can look like hell and still sound good. Like,
That explains
no,
why I'm wearing
absolutely.
why we look the way we
sweats,
do.
You bet.
Yeah, we're in our slippers. Yeah, what.
Yeah.
But you've also done things like you said. You talk a lot about Trump, and you've had. Do you read every letter? Because recently they published right below your article.
That was beautiful.
I don't know if they planned it that way. The letter to the editor from a very upset, frustrated, angry person.
Well written.
Yeah, it was. And I didn't look up who the person was, or if he sounded like he was a teacher or a lawyer or something. I don't know the person. But do you read all of your mail, and does it get you? Yeah, you must have a thick skin.
I do now. I've developed one over the years. I mean, I still get a little miffed once in a while. Everybody's got, some vanity there where you feel a little bit like, hey, what do you mean you don't like me? I get a little insecure here and there, but I've gotten pretty tough about it. You have to be. I can't write the things that I write about Trump and think that people who are just as passionate about him and like him as much as I don't, they're going to come after me. And I better understand that. I mean,
they come after you.
They do. They come after me, and that's fine. That's what it's all about. It's that give and take thing, I will say I have been thrown off Twitter a few times. I've been sanctioned.
Well, I think my producer has too, and a bunch of other people I know have been thrown off social media for various opinions.
Thrown off. I haven't been thrown off of Facebook, but I have been tossed from Twitter on a 12-hour sanction. But it's every single time it's been because I've made fun of Melania, which I think is kind of funny, because there are people saying incredible. I figured Trump can't be reading his stuff or he'd have a heart attack and die, because there are actually
Reading whose stuff? His own?
The stuff that people say about him. Because if he did...
Oh, yes, he does.
I don't know. He can't possibly, because I think he would just fall over and die, because that's what they're asking him to do half the time on Twitter. But Melania's, I think she is reading it, because...
Hey, she watched CNN, and boy, did he give her...
Something's going on, I'm telling you, because every time I've ever slammed her, I got the 12-hour slap.
On Twitter?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I can't make
What
fun
about
of
if you write about her in your column?
No, I don't seem... That doesn't seem to really... I have said a few things about her. I pretty much have left her alone in print. But, I mean, I've just made a few remarks on Twitter that were kind of funny, actually.
And it's not just Trump, and you come forward. It's just like people saying, and we're going to talk about fake news, and how do kids, and how young do we start now with the internet, and again, they call it media literacy, not fake news, before Trump came along. And this has nothing to do with politics, because the reason I want to talk about this is because I believe in a media-educated, literate population. Then you can decide who you vote for, why you vote, why you feel. I don't care. I will say right on the air, I am unenrolled. I'm not like you. I'm not going to say I'm a flaming anything, because I have voted both ways. But I will not vote, and I didn't vote in my early years, if I didn't understand and thoroughly read the question.
Right.
Because I said that to my daughter when she turned 18. She did not do absentee in the last president. She was in college, and she didn't get the absentee in time. And I said to her, did you read the ballot that came in the mail at Dad's house? And she said, no. And I said, then you know what? That's okay with me, because she knows I feel strongly about voting. But I feel strongly that you be educated when you vote. And that's how I feel about people getting their news. It's because of, and I don't know if you agree with that, but he always talks about Fox, and they're conservative, and he likes them, but then he hates Megyn, whatever her name was, Kelly. Right. And then CNN is too left, and Melania,
it's
they're
much
too
more
liberal.
With him than that, though. I think it's much more. It's personal with Trump. I think that even somebody he liked yesterday is not going to like today if they said they didn't like his red tie. So I don't think you can even gauge it that way with him. I do think that what you're talking about with media literacy is important, and I really hope that somewhere down the line we are going to have actual courses like that in the high school.
Oh, they're starting with that, and I want to teach it.
I would like to see. Well, go right ahead, because I do think it's important, because I've noticed that kids either know absolutely nothing, barely even know who the president is.
And you're dealing with high school.
Right, I am. And some of them, they hear it, it goes in one ear and out the other. They tend to be visual learners. They are looking at screens from the minute they can sit up, and sometimes even before that. So reading is not their forte. I have to really beg them to read a lot of the time.
But has that changed? Because you worked in a preschool setting early on, and then you went to high school, and now you're at the Creamer Center, which is it's
alternative.
Alternative, so kids can finish out their credits,
right.
10th through 12th grade.
Right.
So, and the reason you're at the Creamer Center is, can I say, is it factually correct to say it's as a direct result of the reaction to a column you wrote?
I would say that was the jumping off point. That I had used a word that is considered archaic now, which I actually learned from it.
Because this was in 2015.
Yes, I used the word colorblind, and actually
in a column.
Yes, and I was defending actually North High, because at the time it was a hotbed of bad publicity.
And that's Worcester, Worcester
yeah.
North.
And it was
getting a lot of coverage for fighting,
it was.
And they put
and
the
I
cameras
really was sticking up for him, because, quite frankly, it was sounding like it was in the Telegram and Gazette, and just in general, people were thinking that it was racial. And my point was, it really, when you're in there, you see it. And and other teachers agreed with me on this. We weren't seeing racial strife. We were seeing kids fighting over the things that kids fight over. There just was a lot of it. Girlfriends. You looked at my boyfriend, that kind of stuff. That's really what I was seeing. And I'll back that to this day. I've seen a lot of kids fight. I've never seen kids fight over their color. I will use the word colorblind again to say that I do believe that this generation of kids, they have problems, they have things going on. But one of the things I've noticed is they do get along. The kids in Worcester, they don't really care about color and things like that. They get along.
And I think that happens in a lot of the urban areas, too.
It may very well. These kids get along well for their own reasons. They don't get along for their own reasons. But I'm not seeing race. But anyway, back when
You wrote a column.
When the poo hit the fan here back it was because I used that term, and the principal at the school didn't approve of it. And what I was to discover was, and it may be because I'm older, that term colorblind has aged out. It now is meant to it's taken as something that homogenizes cultures, homogenizes ethnicities. And I understand that now. I see where that can be. I see where that may have happened. I certainly didn't use it that way.
But what happened was you wrote a column, and you were talking about, and this was at a time that the high school was getting a lot of very negative press about the fighting and the things, and it was on television, it was on Boston TV, it was on everywhere, and they were going to put cameras in the schools, and how can they bed? They had all these decisions about, do we put in metal detectors, and what do we do, and making it sound. So you wrote this column, and it also involved another organization that was speaking out, and I don't have the details on that, but what I did read the column. And then what happened, just from a chronological perspective, is that the principal of the public high school read your column, was upset about it, thought you used a racist term, sent out an email at night to 174 teachers. You said right down to janitors, and I don't know. I just saw 174, and I know it got a lot of press in this area. But the reason I'm bringing this up is they also then asked you, the superintendent, I guess, sided with the principal, and they said that they were going to reassign you, and that you had somehow suggested or agreed to it, or said, I will be transferred. Or
I would say what happened was, at that point, when two people are so separate, so divided.
And that's you and the principal?
Yes, it would be very difficult to work together. And I think for the better of the school, for myself, for everyone involved, it would be better to go in a separate direction. And I was reassigned. I wasn't fired or anything. And actually, I landed. Sometimes things happen for the best, because I landed in a school where I'm really happy, and I do love it. And hopefully I will finish out my teaching career there.
And that's wonderful. But the reason I bring this up is your writing as an opinion columnist had consequences.
It did. And you know what? I suppose in a way that's not a terrible thing. I mean, that my writing had consequences. I mean, I suppose when you throw out a word or an idea, it isn't in a vacuum. And sometimes you do. I just told my 6-year-old grandson, that every action has a consequence. And I suppose I'm
a 6-year-old. Did he understand that?
He did. Well, first he got a little bored with it, and he said to me, Nina, is this a little bit above me? And I said, no, I don't think so. I said, if you knock over your sister's blocks, you're going to your room. You got that one? And he said, yeah, okay, I got you. So, I mean, but it's true. And so it's not so terrible that, if I used a word that I was incorrect in using it, there's two sides of that, I guess. Well,
I would say that's your opinion, and it's not a factual news article.
Right.
But then again, you are a teacher and an employee of the public school.
Right, and I was referring to something that was actually happening. It wasn't like a parody. It wasn't any of those things. And that's kind of where it gets a little fishy and foggy when it comes to opinion columns. People really don't understand that sometimes, and they have to be reminded, this is an opinion column. It's just her opinion. Who cares?
Don't read it.
Right. Don't read her. If you think she's a jerk, fine. Don't read her.
Write a letter.
Write a letter or whatever. That's where that runs into a problem. I mean.
What about your family, though? I don't mean to interrupt you, but you've written about your dad. You've written about your kids.
My dad loved it because he was a big old ham,
and he was a Worcester cop.
Yeah, loved it.
But do your kids ever say to you, I'm scared for you,
Mom? Yes, I have a daughter who's a real warrior, and she does. She would say to me, Mom, don't say things like that. Somebody could come after you. Someone could hurt you, She does worry about those things. My son doesn't say too much about it, but they're both, they have. But I tell them, hey, don't worry about it, guys. They worry about me working in a school setting, too. I mean,
well, that's true.
We've got... we have active shooter training now. I mean, that to me is more dangerous. That's more of a threat to me than writing for Worcester Magazine is, I think.
That's interesting that you bring that up. No, definitely is. So the point of me bringing up a story from 3 years ago is that many people listening didn't know about it.
Right.
They don't know that your column had the consequence of you being reassigned.
Right.
It turned out to be a good thing for you, which is great. But People say things about news. I've had this conversation in my family, and I just want the conversation to continue. And this show is called Community Conversations. And my guest, by the way, is Janice Harvey, who's a senior columnist at Worcester Magazine and also a teacher in the Worcester Public Schools at the Creamer Center, which is a high school in Worcester. And we're here talking about about media literacy, fake news, what's real, what's not. How do you make in this day and age, you've got a president too, as Twitter has become much more of social media in general is much more of a platform. And I personally wanted to do this show because I would love to teach a class on media literacy. It's just like when we used to do reports and we would have to do a footnote.
Right.
You have to quote your source. So that makes you have to look at your source. So it's interesting that, people sometimes say, I don't like that person because I read this thing. Now, that's a blogger.
Right.
Is there a difference between a blog to me is much like a print column, it's opinion. It's also someone that necessarily is not a journalist. It could be someone who was trained in journalism.
You have to read the fine print because
That's
sometimes
right.
if you go on New York Times or something, you'll see you hit opinion, and then you look down and there's a lot of stuff on there, and you're not necessarily getting somebody that it's bloggers, it's stuff like that, or it's just somebody who is an occasional contributor or whatever. So you really have to look at it, and kids don't. I don't think. I think that they're in desperate need of lessons on how to sniff out a fake.
But would they admit that? Because is it a fake? The word fake is troubling me a bit personally because the opposite of fake is real.
Yeah.
So is there such a thing now as real news? Because you don't hear anybody talk about real news. What is real? And I struggled with that. So knowing that you were coming in today and knowing that this is a topic that I have a master's in education and I really want to teach kids. I think the younger you start, the better now. Because as you said, even the teenagers still do. My daughter reads books every once in a while, but it's definitely as they're coming up and younger, their whole life has been, she didn't get a cell phone they didn't even have them till she was like 9 or 10. Yeah. But now kids can play on their mom's phone at 3 and 4 years old. So I decided, so we could talk about fake news. I would do a Google search. And I know, because I've been in marketing and PR, that I know what a sponsored ad is on a Google search. Or I know that, and probably a lot of people listening know this, but your kids might not.
Kids might not know it'll say sponsored ad.
Right.
They may not even look at that. I would even say, ask a kid, what does it mean? What does sponsored mean?
At what age, though? Like, do you think a 6th grader wouldn't know it, but maybe a 10th grader would know it?
I think you'd find 10th graders that didn't know.
And I agree. And there's data to back that up. Also, there's a thing called search engine optimization, which, again, older kids know about, but SEO, and it's a marketing technique. And in some cases, you pay or you put certain technology meta tags on the bottom of pages so that your article comes up first. So say I did a search, which I did, on do kids know what fake news is? So what did I do? I immediately looked at what are my choices to get that answer. And on the first Google page, number 1 is fake news fooling kids. That was from CNN. So I say to myself, people are saying CNN is liberal. So I got to come down the middle. So let me go to the next one. Do tweens and teens believe fake news? Well, who wrote that? It's an article by Common Sense Media, which I know is a nonprofit, and it has a certain leaning. So then I go to the next one.
My question for you, though,
yes?
is when you say that about CNN...
Fox, too.
Right. Are you saying, this is going to be to the left? Do you really think that CNN is not capable of having information that is not left or right? That's the question here. Is Fox? I think Fox, and I don't watch Fox.
I do. I watch all of them.
I don't watch Fox because of my blood pressure. That's the God's honest truth. But
how about your health insurance? Does it cover that?
Yeah, right. I do think, though, that it's got to be that there's some stuff on there that is not completely swinging to a side. There's got to be something, either side. CNN, I just watched something on a special on CNN on the 70s. And that wasn't swinging either way. That's something completely non-political. Not everything. But you automatically, now this is what you do for a living, but you automatically look at this and go,
I went down the whole page,
right.
Though. I went Fox. No, but normally I would never do that.
But you're labeling it, too.
That's right. And the reason I'm labeling that is because I don't in my head. I would click on every single one of these because I want to see what each view is. Okay? So my point, though, in bringing this up is if I'm not someone that wants to hear every single side, right. Or I'm just going to click on the first thing that comes up because I'm writing a term paper and I'm in a hurry, That's my point.
I think people click on a thing that they think is going to say what they believe. That we've got that going on a lot.
That's interesting.
They're going to skip. I might be a great example of it. I'm not going to click on Fox because I think that they stink. Okay, and that's not right, because that's not giving me a balanced thing either.
But you're not writing a news article. You're writing an opinion column.
I'm not, but I think that people do that with that. They look at that list and they're going to click on the thing that they think they're comfortable with. That's going to say the thing they like to feel or think.
Well, I think that's how people vote, frankly, because they vote for people that have plans or say they're going to do things that directly impact their life, and I think that's the way. That's our right. That's our way.
That's the good way to vote. But there are people who vote according to. They saw somebody and they were wearing a red tie that they didn't like. There are people who they aren't thinking it through. We've got some people who vote out there that, frankly,
Well,
all
right, I won't let you finish this, but we do have data that backs that up. So this, I found some research done by the Stanford University Graduate School of Education in 2016. So that's when they pulled the data together. So it was really done in 2015, where they asked middle school, high school, and college students from 12 different states to, quote, evaluate information presented in tweets, comments, and articles. And they got about 8,000 student responses. And I'm interested, too, in the difference between what a middle schooler, a high schooler, and a college student might say when asked, can you identify a sponsored ad and things like that. And the reason the author said they did this was that they worried that the researchers at Stanford said they were worried that democracy is threatened by the ease at which disinformation about civic issues is allowed to spread and flourish. So they did have an agenda, but they put in different questions. And in middle school, they tested basic skills such as the trustworthiness of different tweets or articles. And then students in high school were asked to evaluate 2 Facebook posts for announcing Donald Trump's candidacy for president. One was the verified Fox News account, and the other was from an account that looked like Fox News, and that's high school. And then at the college level, they focused more on complex reasoning. So researchers required students to evaluate information they received from Google searches, like I just did, contending that open internet searches turn up contradictory results that routinely mixed facts with falsehood. And do you think that that's something that we can get beyond? I mean, there's companies now coming out with, I found out about programs I didn't know about, like fact-checking programs. There's a software product. Again, you have to look at who's sponsoring these and what money's being funded, but there's a program called Checkology, which can allow people to check historical facts, and then there's some game that a company came up with, iCivics, where it's a nonprofit coming up with this thing that everyone's trying to do something about it. But the point is, I think sometimes it comes from the top down, or even from your home, from whoever your mother figure is, or your father figure, or your grandparent, your aunt, whoever your caretaker is. Do you agree with that? That if you sit around the dinner table, you might hear things so much from your parents that you're going to start to believe it?
Oh, of course. Of course. You're always going to believe the people around you, I think. But I think it's important that they do start to introduce this in the schools seriously, because of the fact the younger the better, definitely middle school, maybe even before that, because it's way too easy to trick them now. They're being, I don't think, that thing you described, the 2 Trump things, I could probably be fooled pretty easily, because I'm no better than anybody else when I'm in a rush. I can look at something real quick and go, hey, whoa. Great example, now that you mention it. There was a photo of Trump that was making the rounds it was the picture taken of them on Christmas, he and his wife. And it was going around, what are these pants? And they kept showing his pants. Oh. They looked huge. And I remembered seeing the picture first. And then this one that's going around, it was doctored. Mm-hmm. It was doctored so that it looked like he was wearing like clown pants, gigantic pants. And people were really and truly believing this, like, oh my God, why? Look at how fat he is, whatever. It looked very real if you had not seen the original.
And it's scary to me.
It is, because, and here I am. I mean, let's face it, I would have loved it if those were his real pants, But the fact of the matter is, he had a perfectly nice suit on in the first picture.
Thank you. That's very nice.
He did. And if if you could, I mean, I was reading people's comments, and they were very much believing that he wore those pants. Can you believe it? Look at this. What's his problem? And there were great jokes going out there, like, well, what has to accommodate is his depends and things like that. but I will tell you that he had a very nice suit on, and so that is scary to me. That it is that easy to trick people, and we do have to start doing something about this at a really young age, because it's only going to get worse.
And again, I think this is an issue that, if you agree with me, it's not just this is not a Worcester issue.
Oh, God, no.
This is a national issue, a state issue. It's in your home issue. You're in the car with your kids. You pick them up from school, and they might say, I know kids whose parents are elected officials, and they're in school, and somebody says something about their parent.
Right.
And that's why I thought about
that's always going to happen, though. I mean, if you put your foot out there, your face out there for any reason at all, you better remember that people are going to say things.
And that goes for you, and you know that when you write. Because your
Absolutely.
face is, now it's a cartoon.
Right, yeah.
But they put cartoon faces on all the reporters in Worcester Magazine. But your name is there.
Yeah,
and I'm assuming that's your real name.
That's my name. That's my maiden name.
And people can find you.
Yep.
And that would scare me, I got to tell you.
You know what? I stopped thinking about it a long time ago, to be honest with you. I mean, I do.
Before Trump, before.
Oh, yeah. Whoa, yeah, way before. I mean, it's 25 years I've been writing the column now, and it's, most of the time, people are kind. Most of the time.
Have you ever been scared for your family or your life
No,
over something you've written?
I've never been scared. No, I never had it go that far. During that heated debate about North High, I was a little bit nervous about people thinking the wrong thing of me, because there's two things that you can say about a teacher to destroy them. One is call them a racist. The other is call them a pedophile. Those are the two things that can destroy a teacher. And for someone to consider me racist because of something they had read about me broke my heart. Absolutely. And I had tremendous support from the community, tremendous support from the students and the staff. So I mean,
you said Network News even called you, but you chose
ABC
not to do
called
it.
me. They wanted, I didn't. I chose not to be interviewed. I said because this is my home. This is my job. I want to stay with the Worcester Public Schools. I don't want to lose my job. It's important to me.
And you want to keep writing?
I want to keep writing, right?
It's a First Amendment right?
Right, and but I'm also cognizant of the fact that this was bringing some bad publicity for the Worcester Public Schools that they didn't need. I mean there's a trickle down effect on all of that, and I try to really be supportive of the Worcester Public Schools in my writing too, because I've been there for a long time. That's going on 27 years myself, and 20. Wait a minute. Oops. I just finished my 28th year, actually.
Wow.
In the Worcester Public Schools.
That says a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I know how hard the people that work there work. I know.
And I think I have a lot of teachers in my family, and I think that goes for almost every single teacher I know.
It's a tough
Financially,
job.
hours.
It is. It's a tough job.
Everything is tough.
It's a heartbreaking job when you work in a city.
In an urban district?
Absolutely.
I think it is listen, I have a family member taught in a wealthy city and couldn't take it because she said the parent pressure.
Right.
Wasn't the kids.
It's different stuff.
Whereas in urban,
different
I know
everything.
teachers in Worcester that say, I can't get a parent to show up at a conference.
Right. Sometimes. But you know what? And then, to just, I don't know. Teaching is every bit as important to me as writing. And they overlap sometimes. But
right, and that's interesting, because when you look even on a national level at columnists at the Post and whatever, it's usually a full-time gig.
Right.
They're not teaching. They don't have another job, and they write about that job.
Right.
So we've had a lot of things happen, and with press getting kicked out of the White House and then getting the pass back and everything else. But I think if there is a silver lining in this, because I'm trying to be an optimist, as a true journalist, looking at this I watch every network.
Yep.
Okay? CNN to me is not leftist. I look at that because I think that's how, if I was somebody else.
I think CNN got a bad rap.
I think they all get a bad rap.
I do too. I'm an
MSNBC
person.
My father.
I am.
My father is too. And I said to my father, I said, well, Fox, do you call that, when you watch Morning Joe, do you call that a news show? And he said, no.
Okay, here's my thing with Morning Joe, and I watch it.
And that's on Fox.
No. Morning Joe's on MSNBC.
MSNBC.
Right. I will say this about Joe Scarborough. If he uses the term Madisonian democracy one more time, I'm going to turn it into a drinking game. Okay? Even though it's on early in the morning. It'll have to be mimosas. It's going to have to be mimosas. he just keeps saying, and God bless him, when he's not there, I enjoy the show completely. And I don't even mind Joe, but he doesn't, he's like Chris Matthews. Some of these guys don't let anybody talk, like they ask a question and then they just steamroller everybody so you can't even hear what they say. But there's some really good guests on these panels, and I want to hear what they have to say.
Right. But the good thing is usually every network balances it. Usually, when I watch, it's usually on the weekend, and I'll flip to all three networks on purpose, because if there's something big going on, like when Nancy Pelosi was elected, speaker, I will look at all three. Either I like local news.
I do like to see what the coverage is going to be, but I find that out online, to be honest with you. There's a few things that I just can't watch on TV. I can't watch Trump speak. I can't. I have to hit the mute button.
But you said you like to read.
I will read everything that he says.
His exact
transcripts, absolutely. I will read everything.
Not an article.
I just can't hear his voice anymore in his face, quite frankly. But
again, that's your opinion, and that's what you get paid to do. I'm here to bring up that is fair game. It's fair game. You said you can take the shots, you give them, you take them. Yeah. And I want to finish one thing, because that you said, and we haven't even got to some of the funny stuff, but I mean, it's all funny. And if people can hear you, hopefully they can hear your sarcasm and humor in your comments. But you were quoted as saying that you would never want to be 14 again.
Yes.
But if you could be in your 30s, you would, and knowing what you know now, you would rather go back to your 30s. Why is that?
Well, let's see. I was a single mother, and it was really hard. And if I had a blueprint of some kind to help me get through that, which I could probably write now, and go back and do it. You're swinging by the seat of your pants when you're a single parent, I think. It was for me anyway. It was tough because my kids were young. And, I would first off, I liked the way I looked in my 30s and 40s much more than I do now. But I just think that I would never want to be 14. I work with teenagers every day. I see the angst. I see what they go through.
But wasn't it different when you were 14? I mean, if we went back to the
some of it will never be different. Some of it is just being 14 really sucks. But some of it, yeah. The kids now, they have grown up problems at 14. And I would never want to do that. I wouldn't want to be them for all the tea in China. I just think that I've become very content and comfortable with age. That wisdom thing, it's true. It's absolutely true. You do look back and you go, wow, this would have been a lot easier if I had known this.
It's interesting, because I'd rather be 14, to be honest with you. But
really, 14
I'd rather go
a wonderful time for you then, because it certainly wasn't for me.
It actually was.
I found it to be. It is.
In some points.
It was
better
go back
than
for
30.
therapy for 14, for crying out loud. It was...
Well, now that's okay to do, but back then it wasn't. So
it wasn't any.
So can you give us, as we wrap up,
Sure.
Janice, do you think about your articles ahead of time? Do you have any idea? You don't have to spill something, but I mean, is there anything that you haven't written about that maybe you're thinking about writing about?
You know what? This week, no. But I will tell you what I sometimes I get someone will say something to me. Someone will tell me about something, about someone, and I'll go out to them. Sometimes I'll be on Facebook and I'll see a former student who's done really well, and I want to write about them. Or I will see something, that really gets me tanked, angry. I was going to write, and I will say this, and I stopped because they fixed it. I was going to write about how they tore up Main Street sidewalk in Worcester just before Christmas. It was all torn up, and I went to go have a drink at the Muse across from the Hanover Theater. And it was all torn up, and I'm like, this poor guy who's trying to have an open business over here. It was like miles of mud and cement, and it was just awful. And I was all set to write about it but this is where it comes in a problem where I write every other week. By the time I would have been running, it was fixed. So that was nice. But
you saw something with the city. But is there anything else that you're thinking about? I mean, it seems like you've written a little bit less about your family. You've been written
my family? I don't know. They're sensitive about it.
I would be.
Yeah, they're a little sensitive about it. I can write about my brother Kevin. He's a writer. Also, he's a playwright, and he was an English professor. And he loves to see his name in print. So I can always talk.
As long as it's you that's writing
it. Kevin actually gave me the best advice when I first started writing. If we go back to the subject of having thin skin, when I first started writing, and I had written something that my own sister was upset about because she said that I said I described my grandmother's apron, and my sister said, no, it didn't have rickrack or something. I can't remember what it was, but she just straightened me right out and said, no, that isn't what it looked like. 'Cause she's 5 years my senior. We're all 5 years apart in my family. And my brother, I told Kevin, I was like, hey, she's like giving me a hard time about this apron thing. And my brother said to me, remember, when you write, someone will always be mad at you.
That's a good way to think, and I feel like as a politician, you can't win either. I mean, you're always going to have somebody mad at you. But that's
your
what's
nose
great.
out there. Somebody's going to bite it. It's going to happen.
But that shouldn't prevent you from doing so.
Never has so far.
Right. And I hope that people listening, and I hope kids, if we talk about media literacy in the classroom, maybe you'll write a column on fake news. I don't know. I would love to see the discussion continue, and that's why I wanted you to come in. So please keep the columns coming, because I was up last night reading your book, and I could not stop laughing. I was crying so hard at the sarcasm. Whether I agreed with you or not, I appreciate good sarcastic writing.
That stuff got me in trouble as a kid.
But it doesn't now.
No.
If you want to check out Janice Harvey's column, you can find them online at worcestermag.com. That's worcestermag.com, no matter where you live. And the weekly print edition is available in this area. But that's Community Conversations. I'm Vicki Green. Have a wonderful day. Wonderful day. Wonderful day. Wonderful day. Wonderful day.